Rising Productions, and this is Diva Talk. I'm Mia.
I'm Karen.
And I'm Reverie. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is Scorpio Rising Productions. Great to see everyone back. Today's topic is writing in a pandemic. Our next guest is a former journalist who has had her laptop searched by Columbian guerrillas, was suspected of drug trafficking in Guyana, hid under a car to evade Guatemalan soldiers, and posed as a nun to get inside a Caracas jail, all in the passion of getting that interview. Our guest has written 3 books, Skin of Tattoos, Girl on the Brink, and her co-authored nonfiction book, Peace in the Hood, Working with Gang Members to End the Violence, is used as a textbook at many academic institutions. Born in New Zealand, but grew up as an expat around the world, she now lives in California and is a regular speaker at women's organizations and writers' conferences. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Christina Hoag.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome.
you for inviting me to do this.
Are you
I
excited?
just have to say, Christina, you have the most fabulous hair. It's like 5 times the thickness of mine.
It's fantastic.
This is like pandemic hair. I haven't cut it in like 6 months, so it really needs a cut. So it's pretty
Well,
long.
it is so long. How long is it? Let me see.
I'll have to stand up. It's like
Oh my God, it is absolutely gorgeous. Look at
almost
that.
down to chest. Yeah, it's
Wow.
almost down. When in high school, I had it down to my waist. You know,
Do like a hair commercial, you know, just be like, it's like Miss Clara.
This is unquestionably a very anxiety-provoking time for a lot of us. And, you know, as a writer, you know, are you having difficulty staying focused and getting work done? Or are you like laser focused right now?
You know, it hasn't really been an issue for me. I know a lot of my friends are like, they continue writing, but they're not writing as much, or they just can't write. And I actually am pretty focused. I can still manage to put everything aside, and I just really focus on my work. I'm just started the 2nd draft of a novel. So, and before that I was doing short stories and working on a few different smaller pieces. And so it's been pretty good, actually. I've been able to sort of power through and just really focus on writing, and put all the rest of it aside. But I know for many writers it has been an issue.
Oh my gosh. So when the pandemic first hit, I got so much writing done because I was like, okay, I don't have to do anything else. I can only do this. And I got so much writing done. And then a few months in, it just, one thing has led to another and it's dropped off. So what is your secret to being able to stay focused on your writing? Please tell me so I can do it.
You know, I don't know. I've always been really self-disciplined and pretty much, you know, sort of really focused on stuff. So I don't know what it is that I can just kind of I have to have complete silence and isolation, basically. And I can just kind of just get into that groove or that zone and just focus right in on it. But you know, it's difficult if you don't have a good place to write. I actually go to a separate place, it's called The Office, and it's actually a place for writers to write. So it's always mostly screenwriters, this being LA. So it's really quiet, and I think that really helps too, is having a dedicated kind of space to go and write.
Absolutely. It's like a writer's cave, if you will, huh?
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's just an office space. It's just really quiet. Everybody's very, you know, I think it's just a bunch of introverted, nerdy writers, and everybody there is super quiet and respectful of each other. And of course, attendance there dropped off dramatically
Sure.
just with the COVID thing. So there's fewer people going there, which, you know, is bad for the office as a business, but for us writers, we're like, oh, this is pretty good, actually. And if I go there on the weekends, I usually have it the place to myself. If nobody shows up.
Nice.
So that's been I think that's a really key thing, is having a dedicated space and time, if you can do that, to write.
Do you have a set time limit where I know a lot of writers, they'll write for 4 hours. They'll dedicate a block of time out. Do you do that?
Yeah, I'm a morning writer, so I usually try and get going by 7:30, 8, and write till I write myself out, which is usually about noon. It's about 4 hours. I find I'm pretty tired by then. I've sort of written what I had to say that day and try and leave space that I know where I'm going the next day to pick up the thread, so then you don't waste a lot of time like wondering where you are, what I'm going to do next. But yeah, I'm definitely a morning writer.
Me too.
Rise and Write, I think, is what it's called, right? Rise and Write?
Yes.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. Some people are night writers and some people write in the middle of the night. There are people who just keep writing to the wee hours of the morning, which again, it's because it's quiet and no one bothers them. The phone's not ringing, emails aren't coming in, which also makes weekends a really good time to write too, because it's like much less traffic noise, email traffic, everything slows.
So yeah, and to some degree, the pandemic has kind of like set the tone for that, at least those first few months of quarantine where there wasn't so much traffic and so many things going on. Everybody was at home, so you could be quiet. I think it's a great inspiration that we could take from you, is that you used that time. And you have so much experience, Christina. Like, we just did your bio and introduction, and I just love, you've been in some sticky situations. You had your laptop searched by Columbian guerrillas, your phone tapped in Venezuela, you hid under a car to evade Guatemalan soldiers, and
Posed as a nun.
All right.
Posed as a nun.
That was how I got into this jail. I didn't have to wear the habit, but I had to go in and say I was a nun, which was a little.
That's hilarious. You couldn't make this stuff up. I love it.
I love it. But I do feel like.
I was going to say that's what was my most exciting time of my life, was doing all that stuff when I was sort of a foreign correspondent in Latin America, and I was doing freelance stuff so I could pick and choose my stories, and I traveled everywhere and just did a whole bunch of really exciting kind of things.
Sure. Do you feel like in some way the pandemic has kind of set the tone for writing right now, or will it be a storyline to what you might write?
Yeah, I think so. I had already given some thought to a future project, and this kind of gave me the impetus. I'm like, what, I could set this not in the far future, but like 20, 30 years from now, like 2050, 2060. What will the world be like, and will we have other pandemics, and you can see science fiction coming to reality with this pandemic and movies and stuff like that. I mean, we're kind of living that. And so I'm kind of gathering like little things I see in the news about different, progress and different developments, if it's self-driving cars. There's also like cyborg soldiers where they're actually going to implant stuff in humans to make this sort of ultra soldier. And I thought, wow, that's a great, again, who would have thought that would come to reality as something in science fiction book, but that's happening. So I thought, my next book after I finish this, I want to set in like maybe 2050, 2060. So it's far enough that we can relate to it. It's not like a super way out there science fiction, but it's far enough like, oh, okay, wow, that's how we could really be living in different things.
I mean, who would have thought we'd be living like this right now?
I know, exactly. So how is this going to play out in the future? Are we all just going to wear masks a lot, or,
Right.
I mean, I can see that happening even when this goes down, maybe a little bit more conscious about wearing masks in public and that type of thing.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you have so many ideas. Like, I have tons of ideas, but the hard thing for me is figuring out which one I want to use and go with. So how do you choose your stories that you write? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, I do have a lot of stories. I write them all in a notebook. I have like a book and I just fill it with whatever. So I just write down different things and different like character names. Sometimes I find a name that like is really cool. I'm like, oh, that's a good character name. And I'll write that down, or nickname or last name. And so then I write them all down, and I just have to go with what speaks to me the most. Because we have, too many ideas, and I think that's what most writers have is you just like, wow, this would be a great story. This would be a great story. Wow, good novel. But you just have to go with what speaks to you the most, or what sort of jumps out at you, what kind of comes more fully formed, if you will. So, thought a little bit more through than just because an idea doesn't make a novel, obviously, or a story. So you've got to think it through a little bit. But,
well, I like to think
it's a hard thing to do.
I would like to think of it as the muse, right? Like the muse speaks through you, and
yeah, exactly.
You
will
will write.
Find what you're sort of drawn to or compelled to write.
Yeah. Well, I love that you have so many ideas. That's also inspiring. But I wanted to just kind of point out your 2 books that you have written. I know you've actually have 3 that are out. But the 2 that I've read, Girl on the Brink, which is a YA novel, suspense YA novel, which, definitely had me on edge. Yes. And then to go from that to your other novel, which is Skin of Tattoos. Yes, which I'm in the process of reading. And I'm also really taken in by your protagonist and that whole culture, the gang culture, which is just fascinating to me. And I know that you had to interview people to get that storyline. So I love how different too your body of work is, even though there's kind of this through line of suspense, but they're also very different. So I'd like to know, what are you working on now? And is it different from what you've worked on?
Well, it's kind of more, I guess if I had to choose, it's more like Girl on the Brink, but it's set in the same sort of fictional town in New Jersey where I went to high school. I call it Indian Valley in the book, and it's actually got some of the same characters. The character, Chloe, was the main character in Girl on the Brink, and so plays a minor role, sort of a secondary role in the new book. But it's more of a mystery, more of a suspense thing, and it's going to be more an exploration of sexual assault and rape in a sort of a mystery format, I guess you could say. So it kind of stems more out of the Girl on the Brink thing, and the characters are in their early 20s, about 21, which is also the case in Skin of Tattoos, is that early adulthood age range, which is kind of interesting because you can do more with characters can do more as an early adult than as a teenager, but they're still not fully formed into adulthood. So they still make a lot of mistakes, which, as a writer, we want them to make because that makes conflict.
Right,
so
of course.
I think that's a good, age period. And I think everybody can kind of relate to it too, because we've all gone through that period of our lives.
I also read Girl on the Brink and I loved it. And I was wondering, where did you get the inspiration for that book? Is it autobiographical or is it semi-autobiographical? Where did that come from?
Yeah, that was based on something that happened to me, not as a teenager, but as an adult, and an abusive relationship. And as I delved more into exploring that, it was just very apparent that there are certain red flags of an abuser. And nobody tells you what these flags are, and you can very easily mistake them. For an example, an abuser can call you 10 times a day. Oh, I just want to hear your voice. I just want to, I can't bear to be away from you. And this can all seem very romantic and like, oh, wow, this guy's really into me. In fact, it's controlling, that's controlling behavior. He's checking up on you. So it's very easy to see like that he's like, being really super romantic and really into me, but it's actually sort of a controlling thing, and he's exercising power because he's checking up. So again, that's very, very common. So I really felt strongly I wanted to write something, and I wanted to write something for teenage girls. So that's why it's a YA. The main character is 17 years old, and so it is based on that. And there are pieces of dialogue in there that were exactly, came out of my experience, that were pretty much word for word. And it's funnily enough that other women who have gone through that have told me, again, same dialogue, same, almost word for word, what goes on in these, what abusers say and what the abused says in response. It's sort of the same, very similar patterns. So that's what was the genesis of that book. And I'm having a friend of mine is translating it into Spanish right now. And
excellent.
So I'm hoping to release it in Spanish later this year. We'll see how. It's halfway
That's
done.
fantastic. Great, get an international reach, especially with something like that too. You know, we spoke about this when we interviewed Reverie about her memoir, Queen of the Nerds, how, you know, there was, it kind of, you know, accidentally sort of came out during a time of the Me Too movement. And, you know, of course she wrote this years ago. And I just, you know, think that the more stories we hear now that this movement is out there, that we're going to hear more voices, and we're going to hear a lot of the same stories too, or similar stories and experiences. And I think it's great that you're going to get it out to the international world so that that can be heard there.
Yeah, I mean, these are international. They don't just happen here. They happen all over the world to women, and especially to women. I mean, they happen to men as well, but you know, they do happen preponderantly to women. So it's, yeah, I think it's an important thing that people share their stories, because as a survivor, as a victim, whatever you like to call it, you feel very alone, you know, and you feel a lot of shame. So, you know, whether it's picking up a book and seeing your story in that, or, you know, hearing it in a movie or television talk show, it's very empowering to, if you've gone through that same thing, you just know you're not alone, and you're not the only one who's gone through that. And there's a lot of sort of power in realizing that.
Absolutely. I'm really excited that your book is going to be translated into Spanish. That is awesome. And I was wondering, I also read Skin of Tattoos, and we talked about this at the Shilom, which you were involved with a year ago, almost exactly to the day. That's when we met. I was wondering if your other book, Skin of Tattoos, was going to be translated into Spanish, because I think the voice is so strong and powerful with everything going on, where you reveal the gang culture, and that book really needs to be translated into Spanish, and it would make a fantastic movie as well.
I hope, I hope so. You know, a friend of mine is doing this. She's a native of Peru, and she also works as a professional translator. So I'm hoping she'll do Skin of Tattoos as well. What I want to do that, actually, I've got a new publisher for that. I took my rights back from the old publisher. He wasn't really doing anything to, never promoted it or anything. So I got my rights back, and another small publisher is going to publish it next year. And what I really want to do is publish it as a graphic novel, because I think it would really work.
Absolutely. I love that.
Read a lot by young people, especially boys. And I think it would really work well as a graphic novel. So I'm pushing on that end to try and get that done as well. But if I could get it, in Spanish, I think it would be.
The graphic novel too, I think, will expand your reach, as you said.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, because there are people who don't read. You know, there are people who listen to books these days.
Right,
and
right.
Love the graphic. You know, they love that, looking at the panels. Like, you know, it's a big comic book basically.
Yeah.
So you have to rewrite sort of it's mostly dialogue, and rewrite the novel sort of like in a script form almost.
Well, I love that, because it's so visual to me, Skin of Tattoos. I mean, it's almost, even the title is so visual. You know, you kind of see the tattoos, and, you know, just the image that you have on the cover of the book is very much what you're going to experience inside of the book. And you know, what I love about you, Christina, is that you're so versatile. You have so many different ways that you write. You know, you've written short stories and essays. I mean, this is probably a lot of your journalistic experience, but you have novellas and novels. I mean, do you feel like ultimately that's a good or a bad thing to have so many kind of genres or platforms that you write in? Or what are the advantages or disadvantages of pursuing that? Pursuing, you know,
yeah, it's kind of, you know, one or the other. I like writing different things. I think if you write poetry, that informs your, you know, prose writing. If you write a screenplay, that will inform your, you know, novel. So I think it's really great, because each genre requires a different sort of muscle you have to exercise. If it's a stage play, it's super dialogue, you know, and then if you have a screenplay, it's dialogue with a little bit of visual, you know, to write for the visual thing. And just different, you know, and poetry, of course, is just really distillation of language. So I think everything informs one another, and I think it ultimately makes you a better writer. I guess what can trip you up is that sometimes you're a jack of all trades, a master of none. If you just write one, you get really, really good at one, you know, one genre, if it's novels or if it's, nonfiction or what have you. To me, this just seemed a little boring. I like to exercise and do different things. But I can see the point, there's definitely a case to be made for just sticking with one form. I will say that, some of the big writers, I just read a memoir by Alice Sebold, and who wrote Lovely Bones, prize-winning. Yeah. She started out as a poet, actually. I didn't know that. Yeah. And she was really huge in poetry. Then she moved into novels. Now she's also written, nonfiction as well, essays and memoir and stuff. So some of the bigger writers have done that, and then some just stick with what they know best. So yes. For me, I like doing different things. It's also a break, if you take a break from the novel, which is a long, arduous process of, unwieldy beast. It's also a break, you can write a short story or an essay and you feel like you've actually accomplished something, whereas the novel goes on and on.
Christina, you seem to be really well connected with other writers and people in this industry, and writing tends to be a very isolated, lonely process. So how do you stay connected with other writers?
I found a lot in joining groups, and at first I didn't do this because I didn't feel like, before I was published, I didn't feel like I was like, a writer, and I didn't have, shouldn't join these writers groups, and I should have actually. But, if it's Mystery Writers of America, Sisters in Crime, Romance Writers of America, I mean, there are all these different writer groups. There's also some meetup groups that do writing and things like that. So I think it's really important too. And you make connections, which can also, everything feeds into your career, and you get referrals to different agents or publishers or different things like that. But it's just also companionship and just someone doing, again, if you're writing a novel, which goes on for several years, you feel kind of like extremely isolated and alone in this huge project. So connecting with other people doing that same thing is really, really helpful. It's really useful just to pass the time of day. And people who are interested in the same sort of things, if you write sort of crime stuff, some people are like, oh, why are you writing about that? It's like, people said to me, what are you writing about? Games, But, you meet up with other writers and they're like, oh yeah, great, it's a great topic. And, it's like, oh, you just feel, again, somebody's there with you in this journey. So I think it is important. And don't wait like I did to, until you're actually published. You can join these groups, if you're still aspiring. And that actually you may get more out of if you're before published.
I think you just described Scorpio Rising Productions right there, is, getting together and helping one another, raise that voice and get it out there. So that's.
Yeah, exactly. I found writers to be pretty helpful, in general. People are, say I'm working on this, and they're like, oh, I'll refer you to an agent, wow, that's really great. I know somebody that, do you want to come and speak at such and such a writers group? Things like that. And so that's, again, plugging into this network, I think is really good for just promoting yourself as well, making those connections.
Absolutely. You got a lot going for you. And I wanted to know, do you have any specific writing goals for the upcoming year?
It's basically to finish this novel that I'm working on now. As I said, I finished the first draft, which is heavy lifting, set it aside for several months, and I've just come back to it. And I'm trying to write a solid draft, like deep in character right now. First was getting the plot down. So now I'm trying to deepen character and the relationships between the characters and things like that. So it's when that finishes, I'll have to put it down a little bit and maybe do the, graphic novel script for Skin of Tattoos, something else, and then come back to it. So I just really want to get this novel finished. Again, these projects like hang over you for ages and ages. There's so much work that goes into a novel. Sometimes I think I'm a masochist. It's like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just like write shorter things? But I love reading novels, so that's why I love writing them.
Right.
I think you have to write what you love to read.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've got a lot going for you, and you're proving that you're staying on task. And I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. It was so nice to see you again and hear about your work. Mm-hmm. And get reconnected. We wish you all the best. And I just wanted to say to everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. And, you know, check out our show next week, actually every Wednesday, where we will interview a new artist each week. And we'll see you then.
Check out Christina's website in the description below. We're
Absolutely,
going to
yeah.
drop the link in there, and you can check out all of her books and her upcoming books, because she is a really fantastic writer. So be sure to click that link and check it out.
Yes, and I wanted to add to that that we loved having you at our Shilon last year. And you were just, it was really great to have you read an excerpt of your book. So we hope to have more events where we can have maybe some virtual Shilon. So stay tuned for that.
I can't wait.
Yeah, that was a great event. It really was.
Yeah.
I commend you both for putting that on. I know it's probably a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
And yeah, to get it all together. But
it was worth it.
Very cool event. It really was. But
Yeah,
thanks
well, thank
a lot. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the invitation, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we do a little thing that before we sign off. Are we ready now?
Yeah, we're ready now, ladies. Unify and rise up.
Rise up.
Rise up.
Stay tuned for our next Diva Talk, where we interview another fabulous guest.